Yeah, let's go back to a conversation that we had last week on the programme. The diaspora returning, or should they return? Cathal rang us from, I think it was it Brisbane in Australia? Yeah. And his question was, look, I'm thinking of coming home. I'm a very typical Irish guy. I've had a great success story out here in Australia. He was working with their equivalent of the ESB on some very sophisticated projects, earning good money, leading a great lifestyle. He had a girlfriend out there, lovely weather, earning good money, and everything positive, except like many millions of Irish men and women before him. As soon as you take him away from the faraway and maybe sentimentally green hills and plains of Ireland, they developed this kind of obsessive love with the old country. And he said, I want to come home. I just want to come home. I want to come back. But he was cautious enough to ask, is it worth coming back to? And we put out that question. And over a couple of days, we received an overwhelmingly negative response from people who had made that jump back across the Pacific or the Atlantic. They'd come from Canada, they'd come from the United States, they'd come from Australia. And almost universally, while one or two of them said that they were making a go of it, none of them basically said they were happy about the move. They thought everything was too expensive. The place wasn't as fabulous as they'd remembered it. They'd eulogised it maybe in their minds too much. And they were sorry. In one or two cases, they were, absolutely crestfallen that they'd made the move to come back. In particular, I was taken by one guy's story. He had to leave with his family. After living in the United States for 11 years, he was illegal. So he had to bring the entire family, lock, stock and barrel, back here, and he hated it. That brings us to Gerry. Gerry, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Gerry. How are you?
Good. You were listening last week.
I certainly was.
Now, our friend, Cathal, I don't know whether he will. It'll be fascinating to see if after he heard everything he heard last week, if he does come back.
Oh, I'd say he's done an unpick heart already, about turn.
And I think property prices here are something that he'll be considering, and that's certainly something that was in your mind.
Definitely, it was while listening to your programme and to that guy and other people who phoned in to you, people who had come back, as you said, and decided to leave again. Yeah. Property prices in this country are just crazy. I'm sure you're well aware of it, and most of your listeners. But the main reason I rang you, Gerry, was approximately Wednesday week in the Irish Times property section, and Sunday last in the Independent property section. Yeah. In the Irish Times, they had an ad for absolutely luxurious apartments in the centre, almost the centre of Berlin, one of the main capitals of the world, as we're all aware. €53,000.
You wouldn't get a shoebox here for that.
You might get a half a shoebox, Gerry, now, if you were lucky and had the right contacts. And then last Sunday, I was absolutely astounded.
53,000 for centre.
53,000.
For the centre of Berlin.
This was on the main drag now. It wasn't sort of out in the suburbs or anywhere. But last Sunday, not yesterday, Sunday week, sorry, in the Independent in Dubai, a stunning capital, as I'm sure you're aware, beautiful country, plenty of sun, absolutely stunning apartments just being built, €73,000 in Dubai. 73,000.
Well, you could add another 173,000 to buy anything equivalent here.
Go again, Gerry.
More, yeah.
You'd have to go twice that or more.
Well, the thing that fascinates me, and I'm not trying to sell my house now, but we bought our house for what I thought was an absolute fortune. It was about 122,000.
Yeah.
17 years ago. It's worth a couple of million now.
Exactly.
A couple of million. The first house I bought in Marino, small little houses that were built, I think, by the Germans just after the war here. 22,000. Those houses were going recently for 450,000.
Exactly. Well, I'm not in the property market, Gerry, but for 20 odd years I was in a business associated with property, so I always kept an eye on property and so forth. I don't have any, by the way, in case anyone listening in knows me, thinks I'm suddenly rich. But how the developers in this country can charge the prices they're charging?
Well, it's like everything, though. It's like, I'm not going to try and defend developers, but it's like everything. You only get what the market will bear.
Oh, that's it. The biggest culprits here, by the way,
are the consumers. Yeah.
are the buyers, as in all things.
I mean, the reason that we're now paying on average about €25 for a main course in a mid-range restaurant is because we'll pay it.
Exactly. I think we've lost control of ourselves, Gerry.
Yeah. But it brings us back to the question. Imagine you're thinking of coming back and you're in Brisbane or you're in the Bronx or you're in Vancouver. And salaries are inevitably lower in those countries than they are in this country. So your amassed wealth is going to be, well, compared to the cost of living in this part of the world, it's not going to be enough to give you a comparable residence. So all these people who are thinking of coming back, and there's lots of them now, because we've more people coming back into Ireland than we have people leaving the country now. It's a fantastic reversal of fortune, but there seems to be a universal theme linking them all, and that is when they come back here, they cannot have the lifestyle that they had in the country that they had made their now temporary home.
That's exactly the point. But I, Gerry, personally have two people very, very close to me living away, and both of them have done so for about 12, maybe 13 years. They both live Ferdinand, and they're extremely close. And when they come home on average once, twice per year to visit, obviously, sometimes for a few days, sometimes for a week. And they are totally astounded at the price of everything, apart from property in particular. One of them has bought a house in South Africa, and the house he bought in South Africa, he would have to add maybe quadruple what he paid for a beautiful house with a swimming pool, the whole works. He'd have to add 4 times that amount to buy anything similar here. I just say one thing, Gerry, to anybody listening in who is thinking of coming home. I would not deter them, because I think everybody deserves a right to come back to their birthplace.
But when your heart starts beating that fast, there's very few people who can resist the lure of that.
Exactly, and a lot of what you said last week was right, and my heart went out. I'll tell you one girl in particular, the girl who I think was going back to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
She'd been here for 5 years. My heart went out to her, leaving her mother behind and her relatives. But she laid it on the line. She just cannot live here in the same style that she can live in Las Vegas. And when you look at it, Las Vegas is a huge capital, and it's a money city. You know what I mean? It's not a poverty-stricken city.
Well, that was the thing. Even though they were all quite different stories, and there was, I think you have to separate the guy who had to come back because he was illegal and his entire family had to come back with him. That's a bit different. Yeah, he was. But all of them had found that when they came back here, number one, they couldn't get accommodation equivalent to what they'd been able to afford back in the US or back in Australia or wherever. Number two, their money didn't stretch as far, so they didn't have the kind of entertainment. They weren't able to buy the sort of cars. They weren't able to have the kind of lifestyle or take the sort of holidays.
They just can't have the same life, Gerry. That's it.
And signs on it. You earn a fortune in this country and you can live reasonably well. Earn a fortune in any other country in the developed world and you live like a king.
You're top notch. Exactly, and it shouldn't be like that.
I mean, we are becoming a nation of debt. We've the most serious debt in the entire European Union. The highest wages and an increasingly ramped up inflation rate in this country. So
madness.
I think if I was living away at the moment, right, particularly if I was a bit younger, I'd be really having a heartfelt talk with the mirror before I considered coming back.
That's exactly the point, and I'm a supreme optimist in everything in life, but you have to be a realist as well. That's the advice I'd give to people. And a small bit of advice, Gerry, I'm not knocking him, I wouldn't be overgunning him, our friend,
Eddie Hobbs.
Rip Off Ireland.
Eddie Hobbs.
Eddie Hobbs. Well, I think any person coming back to Ireland, if they were to ask, thinking of coming back, if they were to ask me one single bit of advice, I would say get on to RTE or whoever and try and get a copy of the DVD of the Rip Off Ireland shows and then make your decision.
And then when you're finished watching that, you could watch David McWilliams. And
exactly.
I think between the two of them, better. I think you'd probably go, sure, we'll stay here for a while. Good morning.
I think they'd see that they're doing okay, Gerry, where they are.
Good morning. James, good morning to you.
Good morning, Gerry.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yourself?
Good, very good. All the better for hearing you. You have a good story to tell us. Let's hear it.
Well, I don't know if it's good or not, but thought it was interesting anyway.
Well, it's better than saying he's a crap story, isn't it?
Well, it's a true story anyway, right?
Okay, right.
I'll just go back to the 26th of July, 01.
Mm-hmm.
Driving along the road, I drive for a living, right?
Yeah.
And I picked up this hitchhiker, a fella called Yannick from France.
And where did you do this?
I think I picked him up somewhere about Claremorris, and I brought him to Donegal town.
Because not a lot of people will do that nowadays.
Well, I suppose it's, it was 01, so it's 5-6 years ago now.
Yeah.
Reluctantly, I still, sometimes, if it's raining, I usually pick up people, and my wife always says I shouldn't, but I do sometimes. Depending on the mood and depending on, if there's space in the car. But anyway, picked them up anyway. We started to talk about life in general, and, I always, it's good company when you're long journeys.
Sure.
If you get...
oh, no, there was a stage in my life when I did a lot of driving around the country, and some of it by myself, and it's kind of soul-destroying, to be honest.
Sometimes. So anyway, I picked up this lad. He's probably about 30 years of age. He told me that he used to work in finance in France, and he got bored of it, so what he did then, he left, and he started a waiter. He waiters during the summer months. 6 months between Paris and London, and he has backpacks for the other 6 months around the world. So this was July, and I asked him, I said, where were you at last Christmas Day? He says, I was in a rainforest somewhere in Brazil, he says, on my own. And I thought that was amazing on Christmas Day to be down there and not even thinking about Christmas, So
that is amazing.
I said to him, what to do? In 5 years' time, give me a little note and tell me where you are. So lo and behold, Thursday, came home from work, and there was a little note from him. And it goes, I have the note here in front of me, right?
Well, let's hear it.
And I read it, and it just goes, hi. Once upon a time I was hitchhiking in Ireland. The weather was wet, of course. And you told me, send a letter in 5 years. When I meet cool people, now I didn't underline this, but I'm going to underline this later on, right? I always ask their address and say thank you. Your list was a long one. Have fun, Janik from France. My list was on the 26th of July, 2001. I give you money from Kyrgyzstan. And he includes 2 notes, bank notes from Kyrgyzstan. Isn't that amazing?
What does that make you feel like? Do you feel trapped? Do you feel like he's been around the globe 22 times? He's now writing from a country that we can barely pronounce the name of, and we're still here.
Well, yeah, it's funny when my wife, we were talking about him, and, we think of the ordinary day life of everybody in Ireland, or most of us. Every day of the week's planned out for you, your work and your children. And
and the further you get stuck into it, the less likely you are to escape from it.
Exactly. So,
and he's out in where?
In Kyrgyzstan at the moment. Well, yeah. But that's an amazing letter, really. Just says, give me a buzz or write me a note. I wrote me address on an envelope, and he actually included the envelope inside the letter that I wrote my address on.
And has he got a return address?
He hasn't, and of course he probably has no mobile phone even, but there's no address, and which was a pity really, because I'd love to have just even a phone call to him,
Well, you could have written back, I'm still driving.
Well, he has this little drawing on it, him hiking and the backpack and the sun shining in the sky, and that is some life, isn't it?
Well, thank you, James.
Listen, and it'll be interesting if anybody else would have an event, a character to give a lift on the road that had a funny story to tell.
You're not going to get too many people to rival that story, I can tell you that, unless I'm sorely mistaken, and if you can, please.
Well, I thought it was very interesting myself, and I said to my wife, I'm going to ring Gerry Ryan. She said, yeah.
Well, good for you.
You're always ringing Gerry Ryan, that's me.
Environment Minister Dick Roche, sorry, I got some toast in my teeth. Environment Minister Dick Roche said that he was planning radical ways to change the licensing of dogs after young Louise Kelly, this was an awful event, was attacked by a pit bull terrier yesterday. You probably saw it in the papers. However, the minister has refused to consider an outright ban on certain breeds, such as pit bull terriers. Why do people keep these dogs? I mean, it's a question we've asked several times. I have to say we've never gotten a good answer or a credible one, even from those who cherish these animals. They are not pets. Their nature is aggressive, and they are bred for fighting. And nobody can really argue that. That's what they're bred for. That's what they do. Joining me now on the line is the General Manager of the DSPCA, Jim Cahill. Good morning, Jim.
Morning, Gerry.
Thanks for joining us. Now, the inevitable reaction from breeders and from those who love these dogs, and there are plenty who do, is that you've got it all wrong. It's the owner of the dog that makes the dog as bad and as bold and as much of a threat as it can possibly be, not the dog. I don't believe that. I think the dog's in fact inherently dangerous.
But the one inherent danger with the dog is the fact that it has a lockjaw, where if it bites, it can actually lock its jaw.
Yeah.
And to remove the dog from your arm or your leg, the dog can withstand horrific pain before it actually will release. You could actually bash the dog over the head with an iron bar, and he still won't release. He's able to withstand that type of pain. That's the type of way the dog is made.
So he's a hugely elevated pain threshold.
Absolutely.
So the dog is a perfect killing machine, basically, isn't it?
Well, they're bred for a killing machine, but you could get a pit bull as a pup. And you could rear that as a family pet and really have no problem. Most of these dogs you're going to come across in newspaper, and we've had it for several years now, is because they're taken in by young people, there's a status symbol that you're not going to touch me if I have my pit bull. And it's quite true. I mean, if the dog warden goes to check why it hasn't got a muzzle on it, there's very little you can do unless you can get a snatch wire up quick to catch the dog. That dog doesn't have a muzzle, because the dog will go for you. And it's an extremely dangerous attack, as we saw the other day. And we seem to only ever keep coming across this particular problem that dogs do attack children, they do attack adults. They are certainly dangerous because they're coming from a breed that would have been bred for fighting. But it could be bred out of it if the owners were reasonable type of people. But unfortunately, most of the owners who would have pit bulls, I think it's the general consensus here in the UK, they're usually there as a protection or as a status symbol, and not as a family pet. And we would have had this back in the 70s and 80s with German Shepherds, Dobermans and Rottweilers, and they're all fantastic dogs. And today we hear very little accidents with those dogs because people are becoming a responsible pet owner.
Well, we had a shepherd for years, and she was a very important member of the family, and I watched her with all of our children, all of them, in fact. From babies to teenagers. She was fantastic with them.
Absolutely, and that's, I mean, it's really, humans is what makes the dog aggressive.
Well, but in the case of the pit bull, does it not start off being a pretty loaded gun?
Oh, it is, yes, because it's come probably from a background where the dogs it came from were bred as fighting dogs, whether it's fighting in a pit or as a sort of hunting type of dog, and that's in its genes.
So there is a genetic disposition to aggression.
Yeah.
It's also nature's also designed the dog very well. This dog would do very well in the wild.
Absolutely, and it would be great as a pack animal. The same as we have another breed out there, which, if we keep importing them and breeding them, we're going to have a serious problem, which is Japanese Akitas.
I've never heard of them. What are they?
They're like sort of a bit of a wolf type of dog. They're bred as a pack animal, and their nature is to be the leader of a pack. And in a family environment, if the father is weak in the house, this dog will take over as the leader of the house. And that type of animal is out there. They're very unpredictable, but a lot of people are now starting to turn to Japanese Akitas as a family pet. People should really think twice before they get a family pet, the type of dog they're going to get. But just getting back to the pit bulls, it is a status symbol in certain parts of the city. And there are certain parts of the cities you'll never find a pit bull because nobody particularly wants them. Where we've used the analogy so many times, if you're walking around the street with a Stanley knife, you're going to be arrested. If you walk around with a pit bull, you'd be left alone. And that's really what's happening.
Well, there are those who will say that it's a step too far to outlaw them completely. I actually don't think that that's a step too far.
They outlawed them in the UK, and it hasn't happened. But what they've done in the UK now is that if you have a pit bull, you can get it on a register. The dog is taken in for assessment. And in the UK, it's done by the police, and if they assess that that's actually a family pet, you'll be put on the register. They'll know where the dog is, but if it's regarded as not a family pet, they'll actually put it down.
But how would you assess it? Is it possible, from your experience, to do that?
You can, yeah. We have two ladies in our own shelter, and they actually can assess any dog, whether it's aggressive, it's a pet, whether it will get around other dogs. And we do that on a weekly basis up at the shelter. Because we get in a huge amount of rescue animals, and some of them are extremely vicious. So
what would you suggest, Jim? I mean, my suggestion, because I'm not as au fait with the possibilities and the potential as you are, is to just say this is a dangerous animal. It should be outlawed completely, and nobody should be allowed have one of these animals, whether they keep it indoors or outdoors. What do you think should be the case?
Well, if they're going to have a complete ban on it, then somebody has to enforce it. And unfortunately, we don't have the facilities, or we don't have the power, we don't have the manpower to enforce such a ban. They didn't have it in the UK, which is a much bigger country. It's an extremely difficult thing to enforce a ban on one type of breed. Certainly there could be enforcement if the pit bull, as it is not supposed to be out on a lead, not to be in a puppy face, and it must have a muzzle.
And inevitably, they don't have a muzzle. I mean,
not at all, no. When was the last time you saw a dog with a muzzle? I mean, there are 5 dogs in that listed breed, and you very seldom see them with a muzzle. The only dog you'll see with a muzzle will be probably a greyhound out exercising. Other than that, nothing has a muzzle. And what has happened with the muzzles, they do it on a pit bull. They actually can cut the side of the muzzle on both sides. So it has a muzzle, but it can still open its jaws. Because they're used for one particular purpose. I'm going to keep it away from me, or I'm Mr. Chap, and no one's going to come to attack me. There has to be more control put on the dogs. Certainly they should increase the age limit of people owning a pit bull to 18 years of age, and not the age it is at the moment.
But they're not even safe for the people who own them.
No, they're not safe, but it's very hard just to go and ban a breed, and I'm not advocating that we don't ban it. I mean, I would like to see pit bulls out of Ireland completely, because I think for the number that are there as purely pets are very, very small. It's a very tiny number. The majority of pit bulls that are in the country are used in an aggressive manner. And
now we know that any dog, if it's treated badly and treated aggressively, can become dangerous. But very few of them are in fact technically designed by nature as well as the pit bull.
No, I mean, any other dog that can bite, it actually just bites you, but its jaws don't lock. Unfortunately, the jaws on a pit bull do lock.
And even with, for instance, a German Shepherd, if you kicked a German Shepherd in the head, it would move on. It wouldn't come back in all likelihood if you hit it hard enough.
Well, this is one of the more vicious ones. But people have now started to treat a German Shepherd as a family pet.
Yeah.
And there are very few of them out there that are actually vicious. Only whatever you might say is a guard dog. They become very good, worthwhile family pets. We have 3 of them up in the shelter who belong to staff, and they're like pussycats. They're just gentle creatures, the same as the Dobermans and the Rottweilers. It's really a dog in the hands of the wrong person, whether it's a little terrier or whether it's a Cocker Spaniel. But the whole problem is, if you have a vicious dog and it bites somebody, how do you prove who owned it? And this is where it gets back to microchipping. We've been microchipping up in the shelter every animal that lives there for the last 4 years. And we're running a database up there. At least that way, if a dog is found, if it's aggressive, at least you can trace it back to the person who owns it and prosecute them. Maybe we had more prosecutions. It might just deter some of these people.
Well, Dick Roach is saying that he's planning radical ways to change the licensing of dogs after Louise Kelly was attacked by a pit bull terrier yesterday. I mean, what more can he do you believe?
Well, I think he can make it mandatory that you've got to have a microchip in your dog after 6 months. Every dog must have a microchip. It should be tied to a license, that you have a license for your dog, have a microchip. It should also be mandatory that if you sell that dog on and move it to a different owner, that you have to notify a registered database that I no longer have that dog, it's gone to Gerry Ryan.
Yeah.
And if that dog bites me, at least I can go back to the original owner. If it proves that he sold it to you, then we can have you charged for having a dangerous dog out there. That's one thing you could do. It's not going to cost the state anything whatsoever. Just make the law and implement it, as simple as that. I think enforcement of it is obviously a different kettle of fish. You certainly could have some sort of restriction on pit bulls out there.
Well, I mean, for instance, the guards will come knocking on your door if it's reported that you're in possession of an illegal firearm. Why would they not knock on your door if you were in possession of an illegal pit bull terrier? I don't see the difference.
One reason, when you're taken to court, and we've had it so many times, we've gone to court because we had took the pit bull out of your house. But when we went to court, you said, well, I don't own the dog, I just took it in last night as a stray. And the judge will throw it out of court. Because
there's no documentation, no microchip, no traceability. Shay, good morning to you.
Hi, Gerry.
Well, what happened? I
was just telling you, researcher, there's a friend of mine that just before Christmas had his dog killed by a pit bull.
Oh my God.
Now, his dog was only a small little sort of a terrier, quiet little, a quiet dog, Gerry. But it used to get out the front and run around out the cul-de-sac he lived in, and he'd come back an hour later or whatever, and that would be it for his run. But this morning, my friend was out and the dog got out. And when on his way back, he drove and he saw his dog in the mouth of the pit bull. And we knew where the pit bull, who had it, who owned it. It was roaming with another dog, an Alsatian. And he knew his dog was dead. You could see it. It was in its mouth, jaws locked. The dog was dead.
Dead.
He tried to actually run over the pit bull. Believe it or not, he tried to drive at the pit bull to run it over. But the pit bull still had his dog in his mouth and ran up the road back into where he lived. So my friend went in and banging the door down, and the people came out. They didn't really seem to care, so he called the police. So the police came, and the police got into the house and out the back, and basically brought his dog out in a plastic bag and said, "There's your dog." And my friend, of course, was raging mad. He said, "What are you going to do about it?" I said, "What can we do?" He said, "Well, surely you can do something. Now, these people have had a pit bull before, Jay, that was put down for attacking people. Now they got another one, and it's out in the streets roaming." So,
and
said,
did the owner of the dog, the owner of the pit bull, were they in the least concerned about what had happened?
No, Jay, they weren't.
See, that's a huge part of the problem.
Yeah.
The nature of the owner seems to contribute, quite dramatically to the breed is dangerous. We know that, but the nature of the owners, and there seems to be a theme running through this. These people seem to be irresponsible, are indeed possibly as aggressive as the flipping dogs themselves.
But the policeman's attitude was, "There's nothing we can do." And he said, "Why can't you do anything? It's after killing the dog here." He said, "It could have been a child." He said, "Well, unless you get a complaint." He said, "Well, I'm making a complaint."
Yeah.
He says, "Well, okay, we'll see what we can do." So that was the attitude. We'll see what we can do. Now, Jerry, just as a little thing, I was watching a program there only recently, one of these Americans on Bravo or something, one of these cop shows, and I think it was Miami, the Miami-Dade, where they have them banned. In most states in America, a lot of them have them banned now. And they caught one roaming the streets, traced it back to its owner, and they arrested the owner, brought him to the police station, told him he had 7 days to get rid of the dog out of the state, or they'd put it down and he'd be arrested again and charged. Now, they went back to him after a few days to see how he was getting on. He still hadn't got rid of the dog. They told him he had 2 or 3 days left. That was it. And eventually, the man got the dog out. He actually had 2 another one in a kennels in the back, and he got them out of the state to somebody else, another owner outside the state. But they would have enforced it. Now, there's a dog.
Going back to, we've been talking about this recently, and in relation to sentencing, and in the United States, when you break the law comes after you, and you don't win.
But you have a law, Jerry, for these things to be muzzled. There's a little girl yesterday. Was the dog muzzled? Well, then who's going to charge the owner? What's going to happen to the owner? That's an assault, Jay. Like the other chap said earlier, it's like carrying a Stanley knife, only worse.
Well, I mean, you heard what Jim Cowell from the DSPCA was saying, and that seems to be the big problem. You go to court. The guards, in fairness to them, do bring people to court over these things. You stand up in court, you give your evidence, you say, Gerry Ryan's pit bull terrier attacked Shay's child, and the judge says, well, Mr. Ryan, what have you got to say? It's not my dog, Your Honour. How do you mean? Somebody I left the door open last night and he came in, he wandered in, and I don't know who owns him. I think it might have been a bloke down the road, but he's gone to England to a horse fair. Sorry about that, man.
Well, then the person, whoever has the dog with them, Jerry, should be charged.
Well, that's
and
exactly.
If they don't own the dog, they should be able to tell who did.
Yeah.
Who does own the dog.
And you should be able to give reasonable evidence. You should be able to give reasonable evidence indicating ownership, and that should be enough to give responsibility.
They're vicious. I'm not saying they all are. I know your chap said the staffs or whatever are fine or whatever, but we all know the pit bulls are vicious.
Yeah, we do. Okay, thank you for that. Anne, good morning to you.
Good morning, Gerry.
How are you? Now, you have a brother and sister-in-law, and they live in Canada, and they have one of those bull mastiffs that we were talking about.
They had.
And what happened?
Well, I'm feeling quite emotional, actually, even thinking about it now, to be honest. But they had a beautiful, big mastiff, beautiful, big family pet, Slobber in Egypt. You'd roll about the ground wrestling with him, just a lovely family pet. And one day, the neighbours had some friends over who had a child. That child came to play in my sister and brother-in-law's garden. And the lovable family pet came down the back decking steps, casually into the garden, grabbed the child by the neck, and unfortunately that child didn't survive.
God almighty.
5 years of age. And that child pleaded with my sister-in-law for help. And she could do nothing. The jaws locked. She beat the dog with whatever she could get her hands. She actually broke a bone in her hand, beating the dog to try and get the dog off the child. But unfortunately, it just didn't work. So I had to phone, because when I heard that gentleman asking if a Mastiff would be suitable as a family pet, the hairs on the back of my neck just stood up. People just have to realise that big dogs are not good as family pets. They're not, because they can be the biggest, lovable animals with the family. But what about the other people that come to the house?
Well, there must have been there is obviously an explanation in nature as to why that happened.
Yes.
Which is of no use to that child, or indeed your family, or indeed her family.
Definitely not her family.
Well, that must be what a thing to have to live with.
It destroyed them. It destroyed them. So I would just beg that gentleman to think very, very seriously about any sort of dog like that if he's thinking about a family pet. Any dog. I have 2 dogs.
Yeah.
And I love those dogs to pieces, but I would not trust those dogs around any other person, bar myself and my husband. Because a dog is a dog. They have in them, a nature in them that they will protect or defend or do whatever they need to do.
Or seek to be in charge if there isn't a discernible leader of the pack in the house.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay, and that's an awful story. What a dreadful thing to have to live with.
It's a terrible thing to have to reiterate, but unfortunately I just felt like I had to say
it's a very valuable story, and I hope people heard it loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay.
Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Gerry.
Carbon footprints.
Exactly, yeah. Well, fair play to our kids for giving you hassle over it. I think it's brilliant. I mean, that obviously sounds like attitudes are changing. I presume people like yourself and me who are in their late 40s need to kind of get the grips of it. I mean, we came from, I'm sure you remember as a kid, having to bring the bottles and the returns to the bottle bank to get your couple of pence to go to the pictures, you know.
Indeed, yeah.
And I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, actually, we probably don't realise it, that we are reducing our carbon footprint. I mean, if you bring a bag to the supermarket, if you're recycling, that's all part of the process of reducing your carbon footprint, which is really, I mean, it's a really, really important thing facing us all, because, I mean, when we're in our Zimmer frames rattling around our old people's home, our kids will be paddling to work in their canoes if we don't change our attitudes.
Well, I've no doubt that global warming and the depletion of the ozone layer and the melting of the polar ice caps and all that kind of thing is going to have an effect on international global climate and indeed life as we know it. But I actually think most people in this country couldn't give a damn. They don't.
I would argue against that.
Yeah?
I mean, I think like, let me see a few of the changes that have happened. We've smokeless fuel now in Dublin. Environment's changed radically. The attitudes towards the smoking ban overnight, it was introduced. People accepted it without a thought. People are now paying for plastic bags, which was a horrendous problem. When was the last time you saw a plastic bag floating around the street? I can't remember. Or stuck in a fence or something.
No, all of those things have worked, and certainly in relation to, it was Mary Harney who brought in the...
and 10 out of 10 for doing it. And loads more needs to happen. I mean, industry, I mean, a fair play to Branson for, he's actually agreed to siphon off his profits to help try and find ways of new ways of doing things, not just finding a new fuel. But he was saying, for example, just the taxiing of a plane out to the runway, if that's taken out by a small craft, like a towing truck, they save a huge amount on fuel. Just simple things. And I mean, it seems like when we're taking our recycling gear to the plant, that it's like our finger in the dike and we're not actually achieving anything. Yeah. But honestly, like switching off the light, recycling that can that was dumped in a bag, that was thrown into a landfill, which caused huge problems. I mean, it wasn't just the cost of the can and the raw materials. It was the cost of actually disposing of that can, and then the ongoing problem of where do you put all this stuff. So,
you see, I'm probably displaying my cynicism, you know.
Absolutely.
And but I don't believe I'm alone, as the man said. I think there's an awful lot of people out there. First of all, they don't even know what a carbon footprint is. And to be honest, I didn't know what it was until I listened to Mary Wilson's Drive Time on Radio 1. And Donald is doing carbon footprint stuff almost every evening. Yeah. And I was going, what is it? And it seems to be a way of calculating, the amount of emissions that you can cut down.
Exactly. I agree. Yeah. I think people will become to grips, and I do think it's a kind of terminology that will probably glaze over people's eyes. But there was a very interesting program on the BBC channel the other night about this guy that's researching how primitive man impacted on his environment. And just one of the... Sorry, there's a machine down here at the back. One of the things that they did after they killed an animal was that they left the bone, like the skull of the animal, in the tree. And it was like, there was two reasons for doing it. It was a kind of a spiritual thing, and giving back to nature. But one of the nicest things about it was to let other hunters know that animal had already been hunted in that area, so not to hunt that animal. And that's what carbon footprint is. Carbon footprint is getting us to stop thinking in terms of the damage we're doing to the environment. It's like the carbon footprint, I think, is a very complicated terminology. It doesn't kind of hit people straight away. But if you think of it in terms of, if you're driving down the road and you see somebody throwing litter on the ground, and it kind of gets the hairs in the back of your head going and saying, that's not right. It kind of makes you feel a bit uncomfortable. Like the ad that they have at the moment of people throwing rubbish in their living room. That's what carbon footprint is us polluting. Like walking into, as a guest into somebody's house and scraping your plate onto the floor. You just wouldn't do it, you know what I mean? So it's getting into people's minds that...
Well, I think the big changes will take place as a result of legal pressure.
Oh, absolutely.
And restrictions being put on, for instance, car manufacturers. The reason that we're seeing very sophisticated combination engines, electrical and petrol-driven engines, and the reason that we will eventually see new fuel, non-fossil fuel engines, is because they have to do it. They know they're going to have to do it.
Yes,
or they'll be out of business.
That was the other point, is that, industry has a huge responsibility. What we're all doing is like the finger in the dike type of thing. It is having an effect, but it's more, the most positive effect is attitudes. And then if attitudes change, if your kids are growing up with a different attitude to the environment, well, then they maybe will force politicians to introduce legislation that will force companies to do what they should be doing. The technology, I'm sure the technology is there. We have biofuels. Why aren't the government overnight... We have the sugar plants, that whole infrastructure. Why aren't they growing biofuels? And don't worry about distribution. Just make every police car, every taxi driver, every bus, even just start with the buses.
Yeah, but you'd have to have the technology first, and they've... But
the technology is there. It exists. It's been there for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
People are throwing in second oil into their diesel engines with hardly any modifications. One statistic I heard there recently is that they could dilute the diesel reserves by 10%, and at the blink of an eye, it won't cause you or me any problems whatsoever with our engines, and that could be done overnight. Maybe not overnight. Do you know what I mean? These things can be done, but you have to, like Mary Hardy did with the smoking ban, you just have to have somebody standing up and to say to industry, no, you have to do this. And they did it with the smoking ban. You say by 2010 or 2015 or something, these are the things that you have to have in place, and just force people to do it.
I've just had a look at a little book that has been given to me. It's a small little publication called The Carbon Counter. Calculate your carbon footprint. Quick deco through it. It's actually quite complicated, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
But it does, for instance, dealing with cars' emissions. Number of kilometres driven per year multiplied by the car's emission. Now divide by 1,000 to get the total in kilograms. I suppose that wouldn't be beyond the bounds of possibilities. Okay, what are you doing currently? Because I tell you something that I'm still fed up with. I hear people, what about recycling? What about recycling? Out in the north side of Dublin, it's impossible to recycle anything other than cardboard. Because if you have a bio bin, or if you want to separate, paper from cardboard, you can't really do it because nobody comes to collect those bins.
Sorry, I just lost your connection there. But what am I doing? Yeah, I have a van that I drive for work, and that's got bags of recycling material. That's the other thing. One of the things I'd like to see happening, for example, the new furniture store that's going to be built out there in Ballymun. Yeah. Why don't they? Is anybody saying that they have to have a recycling plant there? I was on holidays in Zurich a number of years ago, and you went in, and there was machines in the store that, like, there was various jars or bottles that could be that you put into this machine, and it would give you a receipt. It would give you a credit, like cash, that you could refund at the till. That you're collecting all this rubbish from supermarkets, and then you're bringing it to somewhere else. Why aren't they located in the centres where
you're.
Well, I do know. For instance, Marks and Spencers have a very ambitious target that they're going to try and meet over the next few years.
Well, they need to, because their packaging.
And the packaging is what they're dealing with primarily, and they're going to do it. They are going to do it. Apart from the organics end of things as well, but they have now publicly said we are only going to use recycled material, and we're going to reduce the level of packaging by a dramatic amount.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, and that's brilliant. And that's the things that need to happen.
Yeah.
And that's the things that people need to start going into their Tesco store and saying to the manager, not only do they want quality food, but they want to see the whole carbon footprint reducing. And I think any new shopping centre, any new development, the first thing that they should have is a recycling unit in there. That you're bringing the gear back to where you're actually getting it from.
Okay, good point, Michael, and well made. Thanks very much indeed. Now, John, good morning to you and welcome.
Morning, Gerry. How are you?
Very good. Graffiti, we were talking about it last week.
Yeah. I was in France a couple of weeks ago myself, and the graffiti around Marseille, and I am Provence and all is dreadful. Yeah. But I was bringing the kids to school on Friday, and I went for a walk with the dog in the local park. Not something I get to do very often in the early morning, but I did it on Friday morning, and they have a local skate park, which is absolutely amazing, in Graffine, in Lucan. They've built a purpose-built, actually, for skateboards, something that they've said, we couldn't build because of insurance and all this. They've built the most amazing one in Graffine for the local kids and whoever else. But to combat people putting graffiti in the area, they've built 2 graffiti walls right outside it.
Good idea.
Great. I thought the workers were there, and I said, lads, what's the idea of the 2 walls? These 2 walls that are standalone as such, just beside the skate park. And they said, to stop the young fellas and whoever basically putting their tags around. And I said, what's their tags? They're graffiti. Said this will prevent them from graffiti in the park up itself, the ramps and everything else. They can go outside and they can do it till their heart's content. And
are they actually sticking to the 2 walls?
No, they haven't. The walls are only they were only being painted on. They were painted probably on Thursday, so I only saw them for the first time on Friday. But
because I know in 1 or 2 other places where they've tried this, they put the graffiti everywhere except on the walls that were set aside for. But maybe it'll work in Ireland.
Hopefully it'll work. I just thought, Jesus Christ, someone with foresight actually using their head instead of the place being destroyed with graffiti, they're actually pre-planning. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was a great idea.
It's interesting because I listened to a debate. I think it might have been on. Was it on? It could have been on Live Line. And they were talking about graffiti and its place in society and what it actually meant and what it represented. And most people said, well, I'll tell you what it represents. It represented a destruction of my private property, or maybe more to the point of destruction of public property. And we don't like it. We don't want it. We don't think that it's got any artistic merit. And
it's a modern phenomenon, Gerry.
Yeah. And it's not even modern, I suppose. It's been there since the Roman times.
The style of it now is, the style the kids are using now, they're trying to outdo each other with their tags or whatever else, and some of it's quite colourful. In London for years and years and years, every tube station you go through, it's covered in it.
Yeah, do you want that though?
No. Not particularly. Not the Lewis. I'd hate to see it on the Lewis or anything like that.
No, can you imagine if somebody suddenly decided that they wanted to cover the Lewis in graffiti?
Well, they've done it with tubes in London, but I think it would be horrible looking.
And it is horrible looking in London.
Yeah, it is.
And when they had it done in the New York subway, it was dreadful. And when they had it done in Paris, it was awful. And it was awful in Milan now. The first time I went to Milan, I was absolutely certain I was going to not only the centre, the epicentre of fashion in Europe, but also I thought it was going to be a beautiful city. I thought we'd be all knocked out by the magnificent buildings and the lovely boulevards. And indeed, the people were very nice. There were some nice buildings, some great restaurants, a fantastic racing track. But the place was destroyed.
Same as Provence. I was there 2 weeks ago.
Absolutely destroyed.
Beautiful old city. A medieval city, and the place is absolutely destroyed with graffiti. Destroyed. But I just thought this was forward.
Well, it's a good idea, yeah.
It is a good idea, and the skate park alone.
And better than nothing.
This skate park is fantastic. It's like something you'd see on one of these MTV Tony Hawk's programs. Absolutely fantastic. I'd love to be 20 years younger to have a go on it.
You know, I look at the graffiti around Windmill Lane, and U2 fans come from all over.
That's not bad, actually, that graffiti around
and
there.
I can accept that because I think it's now become a kind of it's iconic.
Yeah,
it's a cultural expression of people's interest in U2 and what U2 represents to them, and it's also, you know, I suppose a celebration of a great Irish success story, both from a monetary and a cultural point of view and a rock and roll point of view. But that's about it. That's as far as... If I started seeing that popping up anywhere else, I'd be very displeased.
So would I. But at least the council have done something about it in this area, and they said it's not a problem in the area as is. There's a couple of porta cabins there for football changing rooms and stuff, and there's a few bits of graffiti on it, nothing major. But just to prevent this, I think they're just trying to leave this place looking as good as possible.
Well, in the same debate that I'm referring to, there was one lone voice. Now, she wasn't really supporting graffiti or defending it. What she'd made a documentary about it. What she was saying was, you've got to understand where graffiti comes from. That it's an expression of the urban uprising. That it's a cultural revolution taking place amongst those who've no other way of venting their spleen or getting rid of their anger or making a statement. And the rest of the people listening just kept saying, yeah, but why on my wall? And she said, well, most of it's all pre-planned and they do it on public property and really they feel that that's fair game. No, it's not.
I heard her interview on Joe Duffy. It's not.
It's not.
No, it's totally not. But at least here they're not destroying public property.
Yeah,
as such.
and it's a
the
good
public
idea.
Property has been put up specifically with this in mind to allow the kids. And I can guarantee you, I'll find out now in a couple of weeks' time that there'll actually probably be somebody there teaching them.
As a matter of fact, will you go back in a couple of weeks' time and see how it's working out?
I'm there most evenings or most days.
I'll tell you what, we'll give it a fortnight and you go back there and have a look for us, okay?
Yeah,
and tell us whether they've managed to confine the graffiti to the walls upon which it has been designed for.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take a couple of photographs of the whole place from the back of these walls into the park and back out the other way and have a look at it this week and then have a look at it in 2 weeks' time.
All right, good man.
I'll send them in to you. Thanks, Gerry.
Well done. Geraldine, good morning to you.
Good morning, Gerry.
How are you?
Not too bad, no, thanks.
Good, you're welcome. Now, you're about to embark upon something that is causing you a little concern. Yeah. Or maybe causing you less concern than others.
Well, it's a kind of... I was in holidays in Gran Canaria and we were waiting at a bus stop and this man came up and said that he could give us free tickets to go to see Palmositos Park.
All right.
And
why am I instantly laughing up my sleeve? Go on.
So we decided we'd go to this new place that he said was after opening. It was a timeshare. So we went to this big, huge place then. It was just like paradise. It was 5-star. There was everything and anything there. And they carried us all around us. There was a heated swimming pool. There was a jacuzzi. There was tennis. There was golf. There was crazy golf. There was...
What was the accommodation like?
Accommodation. It was like nothing I ever saw in my life.
Really? Was that good?
Yeah. It was... God. It was 2,500
square
people.
Feet. Oh, sorry, people.
Feet.
What?
Yeah, there were 2,500 square feet apartment.
Yeah, that's big, isn't it? It's quite big, in fact. It's about the size of your average house.
Yeah, and there was a jacuzzi in the bedroom.
Well, I mean, you'd have to, wouldn't you? And did you get a free glass of sangria?
Yeah, we got loads of free, like mineral water.
And what was the deal? What were they offering you?
The deal was then that you'd pay 20,000 for a 1-bedroom apartment, and
in the same place.
In the same place,
exactly like the one that you were shown.
Yeah.
Really? Go on.
And you'd pay a deposit, and then you'd pay the rest within
60 days.
And what was the rest of it? How much?
To 20,000 altogether now for the one-bedroom apartment.
So that's what your timeshare would have cost, 20 grand.
Yeah, for one week.
For 1 week a year.
Yeah.
Okay. How much did you spend on the holiday that you were on? How much did that cost you to buy?
The holiday that we went away in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much did you spend on that? How much did it cost?
That cost 2,400.
Okay, so roughly you get about 8 years more of that, right?
Yes.
And what did you get for that? You got 2 weeks, did you? Not 1 week?
1 week.
You got 1 week for 2,000?
Yeah, but it was a nice place.
Yeah, a nice place, okay. So here what you'd get is 1 week for how long?
Forever. Yeah.
Kind of does sound attractive, really, in a way, doesn't it? If you fancy going back to the same place forever, which I suppose I've been doing forever. Sure, I've been going to Florida to exactly the same place for the last 15 or 16 years. And I've been offered timeshares over there and always backed away from them, I have to say. So you're thinking of using, I gather...
Oh, yes, and along with that then, you'd have to pay 440 every year.
Maintenance.
Right. And then you'd have to pay for your own flights out there. And what are they going to cost for the future? And then if you wanted to go for more holidays, you'd have to pay, pay extra. If you wanted to go somewhere else, if you wanted to go on a cruise, or if you wanted to go to...
Why, do they have other things in their catalogue?
Yes, they have.
And did you get special bargains on those? Or were they just there?
Well, we didn't get any. Like from 125 to 900, depending on where you went then. You could go for a weekend.
So why? I mean, it's not the worst deal in the world, right? Not the worst deal in the world. And if it was, a fixed price and it was inflation protected, you could do worse. So, but you got to ask yourself, are you going to want to go back to the same place forever and ever?
Well, looking at what we saw, I thought that we would be happy. But then when we came home...
Everybody told you this was a dire, a crap, rubbish, silly, don't do it, you're being ripped off idea.
Is it now? Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, that's because most people have had very negative experiences with time sharing. And a lot of people have been burnt by it. They have ended up in situations where they actually bought, time in something that didn't exist. Or the deal turned out to have a whole load of other hidden extras in it that they never identified at the outset. But of course, obviously, there are decent and reasonable people also involved in timeshare, and they have something real to offer. Maybe these people have something real to offer. Have you sought any advice back here from people other than your friends?
We rang a few solicitors.
And what do they say to you?
More or less that you were better off investing the money and going for your holiday where you want.
That's an interesting one. You were better off investing the money than, except for the fact that if you absolutely loved this place and you totally fell in love with it, and this is where you reckoned you were going to be happy for the rest of your lives, then I would say it's a good idea once you sorted out the legal and the technical end of it and forget what everybody says. On the other hand, you'd really want to make sure that the legal and the technical end of it was sorted out properly, and make sure that there weren't any hidden extras, and make sure that it didn't turn out to be a sort of a 5-year agreement as opposed to a lifetime agreement. I mean, a lot of people have ended up with these things where after 5 years is an option to renew at a non-inflation protected rate, and they have to, you basically have to pony up the same and more again. I'm not saying that that's the case with yours. But a lot of people give advice that doesn't really tally, to be perfectly honest, with what your heart tells you. I mean, your heart may make the decision here and not your head.
Yeah.
And that's not always the worst. It's not necessarily the best, but it's not always the worst. Now, I'll leave you with this thought. Many, many years ago, I was offered an opportunity to buy a villa in Florida for $120,000, right? This was on its own land, a couple of acres, next to a huge big artificial lake with its own boating facilities and fishing. It was 10 minutes away on I-75 from Disney. It had a courtyard. It had 5 bedrooms. It came fully furnished, carpeted and decorated. You even had a bottle of wine in the fridge when you walked in. 120,000. I was advised by a very smart, intelligent person not to buy it. Not to buy it. That didn't make sense.
My gosh.
Crap decision.
Why didn't you say I only live once?
Yeah, crap decision. Okay, those same villas are now going for approximately $2 million. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Gerry. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I have to say, your conversation this morning is of great interest to me. I'm not quite at that age yet, but I have a family of 3 or 4, I should say.
Yeah.
And they're spread over the best part of 20 years. So my youngest now at this stage of the game, I'll probably be pushing well into my 60s before he gets to the age where he might want to fly the nest. And my eldest basically has only a few years to go, and I'm hoping that he might fly the nest.
And how old is your eldest?
Well, my eldest will be 14.
Okay.
And at this stage of the game, like, we're talking about full-time education when he leaves at 18 and what he wants to do and so on and so forth. But the fact remains is that one of the suggestions I thought might be of benefit is that I think if someone came to me and started saying to me, look, Dad, I can't leave the house, it's going to be too bloody expensive, I just can't afford to get the deposit. I think my attitude would be, well, look, I'm prepared to give you something to help if I can, but you have to show me some willingness to do the same in return. So possibly for every euro you put by towards your deposit, I'll match that. Or for every €2 you put by, I'll match it with €1. And that way there's a quid pro quo insofar as that the child then is showing a responsibility towards his own well-being and his own future. And the parent can contribute in some way and feel better about it that way too.
I think what a lot of people have forgotten was, say, 25 years ago, if you were buying a house, you had to have a big deposit already on deposit with the building society.
Yeah.
Now, that was saved by the primary account holder, which was maybe somebody at work in their 20s or 30s.
That's right.
And it wasn't money given, inevitably wasn't money given to them by their parents. They saved, they sat in, they didn't go out. Nobody's willing to do that now.
The one thing I was just thinking about, and again, like I'm in my 40s and maybe I'm getting a bit stuck in my ways, but certainly speaking to younger people, I've got younger friends, it would seem that they've taken the attitude that I'll never get a house, I'll never be able to afford a house, so I'm going to go out and I'm going to splurge on a big deposit.
I'm going to go mad, yeah.
So they're driving around in like €30,000 in pretzels and that sort of thing. Yeah. And
going out every night, fantastic holidays.
Absolutely. And you know, I deal with. I find myself in different companies as part of my business.
Yeah, because if you're going to get a house, you got to stay in and do absolutely nothing. And then what will happen is they'll turn around and go, "How do you mean?" Well, you can't go out. You're not going to be able to go out. You're not going to be going on holidays for a few years. You're going to have a cheap car, right? Yeah. You're not going to have very expensive clothes. And this is going to go on for a few years. What about that as a plan? What? You're mad.
You know what you'd be told, Gerry. I mean, unfortunately, the way things are, when you and I were growing up, the reality was that whatever you got, you basically worked bloody hard for either way. But in this day and age, it would seem to be that there's a greater expectation out there to be given things. And you have a greater expectation on behalf of younger people, I would think, of being due.
Well, I tell you, when I realised, what I was going to have to do, I had left school. I was in between leaving school and going to university, and I was in London, living in London. My father had given me, fair play to him, £100, which was an awful lot of money to go over at the beginning of the summer, and I was going to stay there for a few months. Anyway, I did a lot of going to the museums and concerts, stuff like that. Didn't get a job, right? Rang up. I was kind of shocked. I was down to about like £5. Okay, right. Rang up my father. I said, Gerard here. Hello, son. How are you? Your leaving cert results have arrived here. Oh, right. Okay, I'll get on to that now in a minute. I've almost run out of money, Da. And he said, have you? My God, he says, that's dreadful, it must be. And he said, how's that affecting you? Well, like we can't go out or anything, it's horrible. And, I'm walking and everything around the place instead of, getting a taxi. And he said, well, do you know what you should do? You know what you should do? And I was going, great. This is going to involve going down to the post office and collecting money that he's going to wire to me. You should get a job. I remember I nearly fainted. I remember going back to the house. I lived in Arundel Gardens, Notting Hill Gate, 17 Arundel Gardens, Notting Hill Gate. And I went back and went, the bastard, I've just been speaking to him. You know what he said to me? He might as well have just kind of like cut me off from the family. He said, get a job. Ooh. And of course, after about a week, I realised when I'd completely run out of money and nobody's interested in me anymore, and they were still going out to the curry houses and I was sitting at home, I got a job. Get a job!
Wake up time.
Good morning. Kenneth, good morning to you.
Hey, Gerry, how are you?
Very good.
Morning.
Kenneth, good morning to you.
Right,
22 years of age.
Well, 23, just gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
A young man, are you living at home?
I'm living at home at the moment, yeah. Well, I'm waiting for my house to be built, you know. It'll be built in about a week. Completion, like.
Really?
Yeah, about a week, yeah.
So you
bought it a year ago off the plans.
You built your own home?
No, well, I bought it a year ago
off the plans, okay.
Yeah. Right.
And how did you manage to do that when nobody else of your age apparently can?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I was doing a job in a bank one day and I got talking to a woman and I was saying, is there any way out of this whole buzz that the mortgage, you know, the way mortgage rates are rising? I said, come in here and have a chat with me, you know, and sat me down. Yeah, you're a qualified electrician, this, that.
Yeah.
You're overdrawn, whatever, you know, like, as we all are, you know. It's a fact of life nowadays, you know. But she sat me down and she says, right, well, you're qualified for €200,000. So I said, that's all right, we'll work with that. And so I went off with me 200,000 and find nothing for it, you know, that kind of way. And I was sitting with my mum in the kitchen one morning on Sunday, and I opened up the Irish Times, and here was a place in Kildare, Laois area for 210. So I went back to her with the property, and she said, right, 210,000, that's grand. She goes, well, I'll approve you for the mortgage if you can save the 10 grand in a year. So with that, she set me up with a savings scheme of €1,000 a month. And from there, I just basically saved the 10 grand over a year, and I'm just ready to pick up my 10,000 and my 200,000 check now in a week's time.
Yeah, well done.
I'm delighted, you know. Delighted.
Well done.
Absolutely delighted.
Now, did you have to give up anything? Did you have to stay in a little bit more? Maybe not get as fancy a car?
Yeah, well, I had as you know, the sports car, the 7 nights on the RIP, a week life, you know. Yeah. Out in the swords, rights, the whole lot.
Sounds
every night
good.
of the week. Oh, it was great, you know.
Sounds good, but you had to knock that on the head for a couple of years.
Well, yeah, it means sitting in with a DVD and a Domino's pizza every weekend, but sure, you know, you have to.
And many of your friends have tried that.
Well, 3 or 4 of them now would have houses, you know. So I'm in a group of people, really, realistically, who want to own houses, if you know what I mean. So had a lot of backing from the lads saying, "But just go for it," you know. Yeah.
But there was pain involved in it, though. Obviously.
The pain of not going out. That was the biggest pain I find, and getting rid of my car, taking the insurance off the Hyundai Coupe now, and that's sitting outside waiting to be sold now to buy beds and candles, I suppose.
Are you buying as a couple, Kenneth, or are you buying as a single man?
I'm buying it by myself.
Good
you
for
know?
you.
Maybe in a few years, you never know what might happen, and we buy a 4-bed out beside yourself in Clontarf.
Actually, I look around with my own children and I say to myself, will they ever be able to afford to buy a house?
You just have to put your mind to it, you know.
Clontarf. Well, I'll tell you now, I have a text here. Look, in fairness, Gerry, in your day, houses were earned 15 times your salary and people were buying as a couple. Now we're single and trying to buy. Well, I was earning 78.
The thing is, they were 4 times.
Yeah, they were. So I was earning 78 quid a week, right? Yeah. My mortgage was 220 a month.
Yeah.
Now that meant that I was left with, 90-something or thereabouts for 4 weeks.
Yeah, you see, this is it. Like, years ago, you had your house for 10 grand and you were making 1,000 a year, or whatever it was, you know. It's called inflation, get over it, you know, that kind of way. Like, you just have to cop on to yourself. And I find that people living, like, okay, if you have a couple of kids, grand, you're staying at home, fine. Yeah. But if you're on your own, you're making, I don't care, 35 grand a year, right? Yeah, if you're on your own, you're well able to get a house. I don't care what anyone says. There's plenty of ways out there to make an extra few quid in the evenings, you know.
Well, Kenneth, you're going to annoy quite a few of them at the moment who are going to be stepping into their Imprezas and heading out to the club tonight.
Well, sure, like, don't get me wrong, you've just named my most favourite car in the world, and I'm going to have to wait a couple of years to get it.
Yeah, but you will get it.
So I will get it.
You will get it, buddy. You will get it.
You know, but you just have to, you know, like the 7 nights a week and the beer has to stop. That's the main, man. Sure, like you know yourself, you're fond of a drink.
Yeah.
It's €150 a night to go out in this city, you know.
Yeah.
At the minimum, like, you know, and you don't even have a meal for that, like, you know, that's taxi in, pub, nightclub, taxi home, kebab.
So knock 1 or 2 of those nights on the head a week and you've got savings.
Exactly. Then you've got savings.
Savings as opposed to mammy and daddy giving you the money.
Exactly. Well, this is the thing. What I'll say to you is, like, I mean, there's enough places.
Did you consider at any point trying to squeeze the money out of your parents?
Well, I'm just going to say to you now, I'm not going to make myself out to be this perfect electrician who's the most nicest person in the world and does nothing only, you know. I couldn't draw down off my mortgage for my deposit.
Mm-hmm.
So then again, my mum saw that I had made the effort to save and go and get the mortgage myself and all that. So she stepped up and said, look, I'll give you the 10%, and when your loan check comes around, I'll get that back. Right.
Fair enough.
So I mean, I didn't actually borrow any money for.
So she just she gave you a little bit of bridging.
She just gave, I was halfway across the bridge. She just got me the other half. You know, so mum and dad just said, listen, we'll give you the deposit. And
I buy into that because it looks like it's very obvious. The evidence is there that you're making an effort and that you're serious.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the bank have told me they're going to be giving me 200 grand anyway, so she's definitely going to be getting her money back regardless. It's not like I can do a runner on her, you know. And saying, look, I'm not paying you.
So well done, Kenneth. Congratulations.
You know? Well, so it's just an eye-opener out there, you know, that there is a way. You just have to stop everything.
Well, I mean, I'm glad I'm not starting all over again. I wouldn't fancy it. But I did do it just in case anybody thinks that I suddenly came into the world with, you know, a big bag of money under my arm. I didn't. 78 quid a week was what I was earning. And the mortgage, when we bought our first house in Marino, was 220.
My mortgage would be 1,000 a month now, Gerry. Is when it's finished.
1,000 a month, Jesus.
So then you have your life insurance and then your electricity and all. You're probably talking 1,200, I'd say.
And what do you have left out of the wage packet?
What do I have left? Well, I'm an electrician by trade, so I'm able to make a few bob here.
So you're just going to have to work harder.
You just have to. There's a lot of overtime out there, you know. So you're left with enough for your food and probably one night out a month, I'd say.
Yeah.
And sure, one night out a month is enough for me, you know. It's just it's good if you have an understandable girlfriend who knows that you're just trying to get on, you know, in life, and she is willing to sit in with you as well, you know.
All right, Kenneth, just be careful about that though. Don't let life pass you by too much. All right, well done. Congratulations. Good morning. A documentary series on BBC Two called The Children of Helen House is a unique insight into the world's first children's hospice to provide respite and end-of-life care for children with life-shortening conditions as seen through the eyes of their families and their carers. Founded by Sister Frances Dominica in Oxford 25 years ago, Helen House has transformed the world's attitude, literally the world's attitude, to the care of children with these conditions. In an age when, I suppose, which fears illness and death, let's be honest about it, there was a time when we knew all about it because birth and death took place in our homes. It's not always like that now. The community of Helen House and the adjoining Douglas House has shown that a short life does not have to be a tragic one. Guests are encouraged to live life to the full until they die. Sister Frances joins us on the line now. Frances, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome. Thank you for being with us today. Now, I note with interest that while this is a hospice, that you have kind of redesigned the concept of hospice. I think the dictionary will tell us it's a rest on a journey. And you've come up with your own phrase, which I like, a respice.
That's right. We thought it was really more appropriate because so often when you say the word hospice, people think in terms of dying of cancer pretty soon. And the result is people think, hospice has got to be a really sad, gloomy place. And that's not what we're doing here. So we felt respice was a good word, really, because it says what it means. It's largely about respite care. But yes, people are going to have shorter lives than they might otherwise have done.
Now, of course, there's the difference between this hospice and the hospices that we most of us have experience with, is that these are children and young adults. Do you see a difference in the way that they view the fact that their lives are shortened by their illness and adults? Because I've noticed from my experience that children have a completely different attitude.
Yes, I think that's right. I have to start by saying, of course, that you can't generalise,
no,
because every child is different, every family is different, and they come with unique views on the whole situation. But children do have a wonderful gift that lots of us silly grown-ups lose, and that is for living in the present moment. Mm-hmm. So there's a tendency to make the very most of now, and that's brilliant. And it's not denying that life will be short, although, of course, many of them actually aren't aware. With many of the conditions from which the children suffer, there is a diminishment in their intellectual ability, so they may not be aware at all, or they may not be able to communicate. But it's still about living now and making the very most of now.
Does that mean that I know one thing that the hospice community with adults are very keen on and promote is first of all, the realisation that you are in a different situation maybe to the rest of the community, in that we all are going to die, first of all, right? So we're all sort of in a hospice in a way. But some of us are dying more quickly and are going to arrive at our death maybe a little more ahead of schedule than the rest of us. And the realisation of that, and then accepting that this is what's happening to you and trying to make it part of your life, is an important part of coming to terms with your situation. Do you have to do that, or do you have to talk about that as much with children?
I think it happens very naturally for most. It's more perhaps with their parents, with their brothers and sisters, that the talking needs to be done. I mean, it's perhaps the greatest tragedy a parent can face, the death of a beloved child, and added to that, so many of our children suffer with genetic conditions, and it follows, therefore, that a number of families are facing the death of 2 or 3 of their children. And that, I mean, I can't get my head around that. And all you can do, really, is offer a very ordinary kind of friendship, some practical support, some professional care where it's appropriate, but really, basically, to walk the walk with them, because it's very lonely in there, and that's why so many of the families wanted to tell their story on this BBC documentary.
They asked, I gather, the families that are there. They said, we want to be in this.
Yeah, we circulated all the families with whom we have contact, and we were overwhelmed. I mean, we were going to be very protective and say, go away, you nasty media people, But the families didn't want that. A lot of them really, really wanted to tell their story. And even more so when the BBC were around us for 14 months, and for the first 3 months they didn't even take out a camera. So it was just a question of building a real relationship of trust. They were there sharing meals with us or working the odd shift. They became friends. And so the filming that you see on your television screens is actually just a continuing conversation, a continuing friendship. And the 4 people who worked with us from the BBC really did walk the walk, and there are lasting friendships there, which is a wonderful outcome.
One of the things that you have managed to show and describe is something that I had not thought about, and I've thought about it since. And in fact, last night I was thinking about looking at my own 5 children, who, touch wood, are all healthy. We, as parents, we tend to focus and become very excited, sometimes hysterical about very ordinary things with our children who are going forward in life perfectly healthy and happy, and we get very worried about, are they going to do well in exams, who are they going to marry, and if they've got a cold, my God, is it going to turn into pneumonia? Whereas these, but at least we're, even with the difficult times, you're moving forward as it should be. With these children, there is a tendency to think, until I saw that, this all stops and you don't parent anymore and everybody just sits around, with clenched fists, crying and all. Whereas in fact they continue to parent, the children continue to be children.
Well, absolutely. I suppose when you say about parenting, one of the things that one of the parents actually mentioned in an earlier episode of the documentary was that what they looked forward to on their visits to Helen House was being able to be a parent again and not a carer. Because for many of the parents, it is 24-hour, 365 days a year care. It's drug regimes, it's feeding, often tube feeding, it's physiotherapy, it's turning every 20 minutes. The sorts of things that would blow your mind or my mind, because we don't have to do that. And the grinding exhaustion of it. And so to come and be able to sleep through the night, if we built a relationship of trust with the parents and they let us care for their child overnight, to have a good sleep, to be able to enjoy just being a parent. And also, of course, to focus on the well children in the family who, it can't be helped. They do lose out in these situations.
And in fact, sometimes become forgotten, and that can lead to all sorts of problems later on in life.
Indeed.
Well, I wish you the very best of luck, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us. Congratulations as well. And it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Gerry.
Good morning and God bless. Bye-bye. Well, what an amazing woman and an amazing operation. She is correct in saying she has a fantastic team. And if you do get a chance to see the programme, it is on BBC Two television. I'm not sure whether they're airing next week's episode. I think there might be a slight change in the schedule. I think they're skipping a week. The next episode will in fact be on the 20th of February. Well worth tuning into though. Josephine, good morning and welcome to you.
Hi Gerry, how are you doing?
Very good, nice to have you with us.
Thanks.
Now, your child's hair.
My little baby.
Your little baby.
Yeah, I have a bit of a problem.
What's the problem?
Well, she's 4 and traumatised when she sees a hairbrush.
Oh, I'm very familiar with this.
And I mean, oh my God.
This is a huge issue in our house, and only certain people can comb a certain smallest girl in the house's hair.
But is her hair down to her?
Yeah, it's down halfway down her back.
Yeah.
And it's a huge issue, and it's a crying issue.
Oh.
And the only thing that's happened recently that's positive is we were over in Chicago and we were in the American Girl doll shop. An American Girl got a whole selection of things, including her hair done. And with that, with the hairdo came a brush. Yeah. And bizarrely, the American doll hairbrush is perfect. And I'll tell you why, because it has huge spaces, because for dealing with doll's hair, huge spaces between the bristles. And that's been been progress in our... But does your little one try to do the hair herself?
Yeah, the first 3 strands beside her ear, that there aren't any knots or dreadlocks in. But it's actually gone beyond the joke now at this stage, and it's not going to affect the whole family because we're just so upset and traumatised because she's her hair is her beautiful feature. She's got lovely blonde hair, and everyone that sees her come, they go, "Oh my God, her hair is lovely." And
have you tried using No More Tangles?
Everything.
There's a spray-in one.
Everything.
That you can use without washing the hair. Have you tried that?
Everything. Even we even use Rescue Remedy. To try and...
Rescue Remedy?
To sedate her before.
I'm eating my breakfast moment here.
I wouldn't mind some there.
Rescue Remedy?
Yeah.
What would that do?
Just to try and calm her. And instead I drank half the bottle myself. Oh, it's just,
Well, I tell you, missus, you're in trouble if No More Tangles doesn't work and if the spray-on stuff doesn't work.
I know it's that serious now at this stage. And
How often do you wash the hair?
About twice a week, and then if she goes swimming, we start to go swimming, and that's just... We went swimming on Sunday morning, and I was in the shower with her at the pool, and I came out.
And do you use conditioner after?
Everything. About a half bottle of conditioner every time, and I came out of the shower cubicle with her, and a woman said, "That was a bit traumatic." And I went, "I know."
She probably thought you were abusing the child.
She probably thought I was. You see, that's the problem. I suppose years ago our mothers kind of caught us in between their legs with a brush and said, "That's it! Are you going to brush that? No, that's it!" But see, in the times that we have, we don't do that.
No, we don't do that, no.
We say, "Darling."
No, but I know exactly what you're talking about. It's the...
But actually, it's so bad that if you even mention...
I will tell you one thing, that it does pass.
But it's good. It's too serious now. It's actually in a dreadlock.
Oh, that's not good.
No, it's not. And if you mention it, even if she comes out, she's actually watching TV now, but if she actually came out and heard me talking and mentioning the word hair, she'd actually start screaming and roaring, and then she'd run into the toilet and maybe even get sick.
Well, we've just received a text on our new text line, 51552. It says here, one caller says, Revlon do a great leave-in conditioner called Equiphase, and it's only available from hairdressers. As a matter of fact, maybe if any of our pals in somewhere like Zoo or somewhere like that were listening,
because I'm sure they
might give us a buzz.
That have dreadlocks that want to get rid of them. And
but I'll tell you though, man, the guys with the dreadlocks, they don't really care. I mean, they don't brush their hair for years.
Well, I think I could have a daughter like
She
that.
could turn into a tree person. Or
I know.
Or a, what do they call them?
Eco-friendly.
No, what do they... Crusties, yeah.
Oh, no.
She have a 4-year-old crusty.
Who really wants to be a Brett or a Barbie, like? You know, I mean, she has everything else. She's got the walk and everything. She just so wants to be so cool. And then you see this big knot in the back of her hair that's actually a big blob of...
You're going to have to cut that out.
You see, I know that the minute I go to a hairdresser, all they'll do, their only solution is going to be to cut her into a little...
Into a bob.
Not even a bob, they're going to just cut into...
Here's Anya, right. Anya, good morning.
Hiya.
Welcome.
Hi, Anya.
Hiya. Listen, my children are mixed race. And I have a 3-year-old, and her hair, when it's brushed, is down to her waist.
Yes.
And I was given a tip about 6 months ago to stop using shampoo altogether on the hair and just wash it in conditioner.
Okay.
And a comb slides through her hair now like a hot knife through butter.
Go away.
It's brilliant. What I do is I put her in the bath, wet the hair. Now, use the conditioner the same way as you use shampoo like to wash the scalp and everything. Yeah. And I brush it out in the bath. She plays with her toys, whatever, and I just put loads and loads of conditioner on it, and I get a white tooth comb and comb it out in the bath. And then I don't know whether you want to leave your daughter's hair down or not. What I do is just towel dry it and plait it up into a couple of plaits or pigtails or whatever.
See, the problem here, Anya, is that Josephine, and I'm not saying you're a bad mother, Josephine, Josephine has let this go so far that she's basically got a sort of a second head growing out of the back of the child's head.
Gerry, you haven't seen my daughter's hair after about 2 days.
Really?
Her brothers did a hairdressing stint here the other day, and they put this spray gel into it. Now, when I say candy floss, it was like a rat's nest or whatever on top of her head. I put her in the bath yesterday and did the conditioner and combed it through. But even if you do have to go down the route of getting that cut out, if you can't manage to get that combed out, start doing the washes with conditioner instead of shampoo, because shampoo dries out the cuticles in the hair.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And if you do with the conditioner, now loads of people think that the hair is going to look greasy or anything. It doesn't.
No, it won't.
My daughter's hair shines.
I use conditioner, not all the time, but I use conditioner as instead of hair gel.
Yeah.
And it works extremely well.
That's what I do.
And then later on in the day, you get this kind of soft Hugh Grant effect.
Oh, gorgeous. Now, what I do, now obviously my daughter's hair is very, very curly, but when I've towel dried her hair, I rub some conditioner through my hands and use it like gel on her
When you say
hair.
your children are mixed race, you make them sound like Martians. What's...
Well, it's a much better term than half-caste, which I absolutely hate.
Well, do you know what? I'm glad you said half-caste, because if anybody else had said it...
I just hate that term.
If anybody says that, kick the arse off them, I would
don't
imagine.
worry, my children are half nothing.
How long is their hair, and is it curly?
By
the way, by mixed race, do you mean mixed African or mixed Asian?
Mixed African. My husband is Nigerian.
Okay, so that means... Actually, they've probably got fantastic hair once you're willing to deal with it.
Yeah, the boys have I have twin boys, they're 8, and they have their heads shaved the whole time. Now, they did take to growing afros during the summer, and they got quite long, but just trying to comb it for them.
I bet they probably prefer the shaved thing.
Yeah, well, actually, they wanted to get the cornrows and all that rapper stuff done, but anyway, they didn't persevere with growing the hair. But my daughter now, her hair, when it's dry, it's kind of just coming below her ears, but when it's combed out, it's down to her waist.
Fantastic.
And it's now, before I started using the conditioner, it was a really, really tight curl. You couldn't even see the curls. It was so afro. But now it's beautiful corkscrew curls. And it's absolutely adorable.
She's not your child by any chance, is she? It's my daughter, and she's absolutely adorable.
Oh yeah, I love them all to bits, Gerry. I'm one of these mothers who, when someone says your kids are gorgeous, and I say, I know, I love them to bits.
I know, they are gorgeous. They're very gorgeous, and I made them.
Yeah.
All right, Anya, thank you for that.
Okay.
Birdie, good morning to you.
Good morning.
How are you?
Bridie.
Bridie, sorry,
Yes.
I thought it was Birdie.
No, Bridie.
No, but yes, indeed, Birdie would be a nice name, but it's
a
not
nice
yours.
name too, because it's the day when the birds start mating.
Is it?
It is.
I didn't know that.
Go on, Gerry.
I didn't, honestly, I didn't know. You have a great old Valentine card story, don't you, for us?
I have, Gerry. I got it in 1970, the year we were married, and I take it down every year and put it on the mantelpiece for old time's sake. But in saying that, I do get one every year.
But you put up the same original one every year?
I do. It was one that cost 7 and 6, and it was in the little box. It was the padded one with the cat on the front and the little pendulum around its neck to say, to my sweetheart it was then. Now they have gone on more, and they've put into the one I love now. And I have the poem as well. You like to hear it?
Oh, obviously, yes.
Yeah, this Valentine message, sweetheart, as special as can be, because it's for the one who means the world and all to me. It brings my happy wishes for a lifetime filled with cheer. And sweetheart, what means even more, it says, I love you, dear. Now, would you like to hear mine?
See, nowadays it'd be something like take off your gear or something like that, wouldn't it?
Of course, yeah. Well, it's still the same way, Gerry.
Yes.
Same recipe.
Yeah, that's true. You're absolutely right. Now, what condition is it in? It's been around for quite a while, hasn't it?
It's a bit like myself now in parts. You know yourself what happens over time, because I take it out. The edges of it are wilted, but inside the date is on it, 1970, and it's fading fast, but still it's there, and it'll live probably longer than myself.
And did he write a particular message in it, did he?
He just said, with all my love, God bless Seamus.
God bless.
Oh, 1970.
And he signed it.
And he
Seamus.
signed it, and that is for sure.
Just in case.
Oh, he did, because that's why I have it 1970, that's how I know. And it survived.
Well, it survived.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lovely story. But you get a separate new one every year.
I do indeed. Got one this morning.
The little babies, they're put in then.
Yeah.
Into the Mammy Valentine.
And there's just a message for the meaning of love.
Mm-hmm.
Love is perfume. You can't pour it on somebody else without getting a few drops on yourself, Gerry.
Love is perfume. You can't pour it on anybody else, on someone else.
Without getting a few drops on yourself. No.
That's lovely, isn't it?
Isn't that nice?
Compared to some of the things that people will be reading today.
I know, but what harm? It's still love.
It's still love.
It's still the same thing, Gerry. The same way.
And Bridie, has love changed for you over the years?
It has. It's got more meaningful, I think, because I suppose love comes from the heart. Like everything else comes from the heart. If it's not in order,
love starts off as a selfish thing. I want.
Then you have to give.
Yeah, and then you have to give.
Yeah, and it's in the giving that you get. And
All right, well, that's a lovely story, and thank you very much for sharing it with us.
Thank you,
and a happy Valentine's Day. Are you planning anything special today?
No, I'm in the Greville Arms in Mullingar en route for Dublin Airport, but we're coming back home again, Gerry. We don't, if it was a competition, I'd love to win something, but unfortunately it's not like that.
No, it's not. No, not today.
But anyway.
All right, God bless.
All right,
good luck.
you. Bye.
Yes, I heard, I think it was Andrea Roach speaking yesterday on a radio programme, and she was asked what she was going to do for Valentine's Day, and she made a lot of sense when she said, look, I prefer to have things done for me by the intended, or by whoever happens to be around at the time, the rest of the year, and I don't like to have it shoehorned into just one day, and there's a lot of sense in that. Jenny, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Gerry. How are you?
Very good. Now, I tell you what, she got something pretty good, folks. She got the Tate Gallery for Valentine's Day. This is young 17-year-old Jenny Ring from St. Paul's College in Green Hills in Dublin. And your work of art has managed to find a place in the Tate Gallery. Well, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
It's a fantastic achievement. How did you manage that?
Well, my teacher just gave us the whole theme of reality and dreams, which came from the whole team in the Tate there, and just had to kind of brainstorm all the ideas, and I just kind of came up with the whole image of a chain and the link between our reality and dreams, and then just painted a picture, really.
And I've got a picture of you and your picture here.
Oh, joy.
And it is wonderful, and it will take its place along with many others from all over the world at this International Dreams and Reality exhibition in the Tate. It also means now that you're a Tate Gallery exhibitor, which puts a price on your painting, doesn't it?
So I've been heard, but I don't know if that will really happen now.
Absolutely, of course it'll happen.
Well, we'll see.
She who exhibits in the Tate could find herself with a lot of dough in her back pocket.
I wish.
Would you sell it?
Would I?
Yeah. Bloody right I would.
Depends on the money, I guess, really.
Well, I mean, say somebody offered you 20 grand for it.
20 grand, I'd say hell yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And what would you spend it on?
What would I spend it on? Well, I guess myself and my family, I'd have to say, because I'd say they kind of helped me through it, I guess, and pushed me along. So, me and my family, really.
And is this a hobby, or are you serious about it, Jenny? I mean, Because you obviously have a talent. So that's even I can see that.
Well, it's been like a hobby since I was a kid, really, And then, when I come into secondary school, it's an actual subject, so it's become a proper subject then. And I don't know. I think I probably would like to do it now after school, after the whole Leaving Cert, maybe something graphic design or something like that.
Yeah.
But
well, that would mean you'd have to go off to NCAD then, wouldn't you?
I would, yes.
And would you have had your portfolio prepared and in already at this stage, would you?
Yeah, but that didn't happen.
So that might be next year.
Next year,
That might be next year. Anyway, look, congratulations. Fantastic. Did you get anything for Valentine's Day?
No, not yet. I'm hoping I get that later on from my boyfriend.
He hasn't done it yet.
No, not
That
yet.
seems to be the theme.
This morning at 8:45.
Yeah, but that seems to be the theme today. There's an awful lot of people who haven't done it yet. And it's, well, I mean, there is only 24 hours in the day and quite a bit of that's gone already.
Yeah.
I do hope that he's working hard. Is he in school, is he?
He's in college, yes. I won't see him till 6 o'clock.
He's in college?
Yes, but I have my mock exams at the moment as well, which sucks, so I have to do all them and concentrate.
Well, I'm sure he's got
time.
something absolutely fantastic planned for you, and if he doesn't, well, you know who to ring tomorrow morning.
Okay, I'll give you a call, Gerry.
Good morning. Take care. Say hello to the rest of your gang, right?
I
Bye-bye.
will, yeah. Cheers. Bye-bye.
There you go. Isn't that fantastic? 17 years of age and she finds herself an exhibitor in the Tate Gallery in London as part of the International Dreams and Reality exhibition. Congratulations to Jenny Ring. There's hope for us all yet. My next guest lost his eyesight in 1972 when he was just 10 years old. On the day, he was running past an army lookout post in Derry when he was shot with a rubber bullet in the eye by a British soldier. 34 years after the accident, the incident, I suppose he would call it, not an accident, he finally met up with that soldier again. Richard Moore now joins me from Derry to tell me how the meeting with that soldier went. Richard, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Gerry. I'm great.
Good.
I'm great.
Now, let's go back to 1972 at the height of the Troubles, I suppose. You were just 10 years of age. And Derry was literally a war zone at that time. Mm-hmm. Can you remember what happened?
Oh, I remember it very clearly. I lived in the Creggan Estate in Derry, which at that time was a no-go area, which literally meant the British Army or the RUC weren't allowed into the area, so the whole area was barricaded off. It was a Catholic nationalist ghetto or whatever they called it at the time.
And they didn't go in either.
No, they didn't go in, is right. Yeah. And my school, I was at Rosemount Primary School, and beside Rosemount Primary School was St. Joseph's Secondary School. And also at the edge of the Creggan there was Rosemount Police Barracks, and that police barracks was heavily fortified and heavily protected by Army Sanger lookout posts. Mm-hmm. And one of the lookout posts filled a gap between two houses that faced up in between the schools right up into the Creggan Estate. And on the 4th of May 1972, when I got out of school as normal that afternoon, I ran up through the playing fields of St. Joseph's School, and as I approached the Army lookout post on my right-hand side, a British soldier fired a rubber bullet. The rubber bullet struck me. I was shot from about 10 feet, and the bullet struck me on the bridge of the nose. And I lost my right eye, and I was left totally blind on my left eye. What I remember after that was I woke up, and at that stage I had been lying on the school canteen table where one of my primary school teachers heard the shot and ran up and saw me lying on the ground, and he carried me into the school canteen. And at that stage, I was obviously just coming in and out of consciousness. And at one stage, he said to me, "What's your name, son?" And I said, "My name's Richard Moore." And he was my music teacher, but he didn't recognise me because my face was so badly
smashed up.
Crashed up.
Yeah, because a rubber bullet from 10 feet, that would do a lot of damage.
Well, it did, and in many ways, it came at me from the side, so it hit the bridge of the nose from the right-hand side. If I had been a half an inch forward, it would have hit me on the side of the head.
You'd be dead.
I wouldn't have survived it, And then I remember I woke up on the ambulance then, Gerry, and my daddy and my sister were beside me then, and I remember my daddy saying to me that, holding my hand and saying, "You'll be okay, you'll be okay." And then I remember
the ambulance personnel saying to me, Daddy, you know, I could hear the siren and all in the background and stuff, and I remember the ambulance man saying to me, Daddy, there's a woman outside, will we let her in? And my daddy looked outside, and it was my mammy, and he told the ambulance personnel not to let her in because he didn't want her seeing me in that state, you know. And the reason why is because, well, you know, obviously she wouldn't like to see her 10-year-old boy in such a crashed up way, but as well as that, you know, my mammy's brother was shot dead on Bloody Sunday, which was January 72, and then I was blinded in May. So for her whole world was turned upside down in the space of 4 months, you know.
Now, the damage wasn't just facial, it was also neurological and physical. I mean, there was huge damage done to you, to the extent that you went blind. Now, the bullet, as you say yourself, the rubber bullet, the round hit you from the side. You were very lucky, really, in one way, in the sense that if it had hit you on the temple, you would have been dead instantly, I think. But, nonetheless, even a sidelong glance was sufficient to do a huge amount of long-term damage. What did it do to you?
Well, Gerry, in terms of, I mean, I've lost my eyesight permanently, so I'll never be able to see again. And part of the documentary that's on BBC Northern Ireland on Sunday night, which is what all this publicity has been about, you know, part of that documentary is my journey to try and get my eyesight back through artificial means. So, but I have accepted the fact now that I'll never see again. I've always accepted the fact that I wouldn't be able to see, but, you know, there was a possibility at one stage that I might have been able to get my eyesight back through through a camera connected to the brain, but
it's fairly intrusive, that. I've seen that technology. It does work. It gives you a type of eyesight, or a version of it. And I suppose some people are happy with anything. But it's very, but it does. It's, you know, you end up like being a bit of a Dalek, don't you, with it?
Well, I mean, to be honest, the journey that I took to see about getting my eyesight back and that sort of thing was an interesting journey, and I learnt a lot about myself. I learnt the fact that I'm a very happy and contented blind person.
Anyway,
I have coped with blindness very well, and there's reasons for that, you know. But I have managed to accept blindness. I've managed to accept the fact that I was shot and lost my eyesight in such a traumatic way. And, you know, and when I met some people in America who had this operation done to them, I mean, it was out of sheer desperation that they done that. They couldn't cope with a life of blindness. They couldn't, you know, in one case, one guy said to me, look, blindness is not an option. And, you know, I was thinking to myself, well, for me, in my view, blindness is the only option until something comes up that's really worthwhile. So what you would have to get through to get your eyesight back, or to get that level of eyesight that this system would give you, to me, is just not worth it.
Well, what a story, and well told, and it can be seen at just after the 10 o'clock news on BBC Northern Ireland on Sunday night. Right. Well told. It's been a pleasure and a privilege talking to you, Richard.
Thanks for having me on.
And the best of luck with the Children in Crossfire project.
Yeah,
you must be blind, of course, if you were once a director of Derry City FC.
Well, hey, the only thing is, I never saw them playing a bad match.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks, Gerry.
Geert is Dutch and he still lives in Holland. He works in a factory and he's a football trainer, and he's on the line. Good morning to you, Geert. How are you?
Goedemorgen, Geert from Holland.
Oh, very good. Excellent. They're living proof that the man is genuinely Dutch. Now, you're looking for something. We've already found a watch for one man, but what you're looking for is even maybe more difficult to track down, a woman.
Yes.
Tell us, when did you meet her?
I met her in July 2005 in Benidorm in Spain. I don't know her name, but we fell in love in Spain in a disco, and there's the language mistake and language and the misunderstanding was a little bit difficult between us, and she were getting very emotional, ran away. I didn't see her back.
And you fell in love with her?
Yes, and also she to me.
In one night?
One night, yes. One night in a disco at 3 o'clock until the early morning. But I make a little mistake with the translation of some words in English to Dutch or Dutch to English.
Such as?
I gave her a compliment, but this mistake, it would be maybe for her an insult.
And what did you say that caused the problem?
Yeah, I make her a compliment at her behavior, at her doing.
Yeah.
But I made a little translation in the English a mistake, and she thought that I gave her at that moment a big insult, and that's the problem.
This girl, can you describe her to us? You were telling us that you said something to her she may have misinterpreted. I think maybe she thought you were calling her a prostitute.
Yeah, that was
it's possible.
The night before I spoke with a prostitute, but it was a very good girl, a normal Irish girl. She had a green shirt, a white trouser, about the age, I think, from 38, 37 maybe. And she had 3 children. At that moment...
she was separated,
She was separated, and the children had the age from 16, 14 and 7. 2 girls and 1 boy. And she liked swimming and tennis. And you were on holiday in Benidorm at that moment with her niece.
She was on holidays in Benidorm with her niece. Can you describe what she looked like, Gert?
Blonde, not so big, normal posture, normal body.
Not so big, normal body, normal posture.
Yes.
And blonde.
And drinking was gin tonic, and also her children were on holiday, but at that moment the children were in the hotel.
Her children were with her, 3 children, 2 girls and 1 boy, 16 and down, and she was also with her niece, yes?
Yeah, right.
Okay, well, hopefully somebody out there will now begin to recognise this. This was Benidorm 2005, July, in a disco. Did she tell you what she worked as?
Yes, she was working in accountancy. In accountancy, there's a big, big thing, of course, the accountancy. But
accountancy,
I gave her a compliment about her work,
And Gert, obviously, you're very, very much in love with her still to be talking to us, and you placed an ad in the Irish Times newspaper in the summer of 2006.
Yeah, that's correct.
Actually, I have it here. Looking for Irish girl who was on holidays in Spain, July 2005. She works in accountancy and was in Benidorm with her 3 children and her niece. She likes tennis, swimming and Ruud Gullit. He's an ex-Dutch soccer player. Do you think she fell in love with you?
Yes, I think so, because we have kissed for a while, and she was very sweet to me, and she asked to me, or I even fell in love on her, that she asked to me. And my answer at that moment was, I'm thinking. But certainly, I mean, she also was in love, because in that case, she kissed with a man, and I think so.
Yes,
definitely.
Definitely.
Getting emotional at that moment, because she thought, let's say, I make a big insult to her.
Yeah.
And that was not my proposal, not what I wanted at that moment. I want to give her a compliment, but we
So you were saying to her, you are a good girl. You are not the sort of girl who would have sex for money, like the girl I met last night. And maybe somewhere in the translation, she thought that you were saying that she was a prostitute, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, you're right. You're right in the way you say it now. Yes.
And did she run off, or what happened?
Yes, she ran off out the disco.
Oh, dear.
I understand at that moment her emotion, so I ran behind her, and we spoken for a little while outside the disco, and she was very emotional, and I said to her, I hope so, tonight we meet again at the disco at 12 o'clock, I asked on her for the next day. I want to say at 12 o'clock. And maybe she understands that I mean 12 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, dear, yeah.
But the meaning of my word was 12 o'clock.
At night?
On the same disco in the night, yes.
Yes, of course.
And the next evening I wait for her for 12 o'clock at 4:30. But, she don't come.
No sign?
No.
And still, you search for her, you pine after her, you love her so much that you...
Yeah.
And you love her, do you love her more, the same?
Yeah, but it was very good between us. It was a very good contact, a very good speaking for some 3-4 hours. I hold on some drink for her, gin tonic, I mean. And it was a very good... lovely, normal contact.
A good contact, it sounds like.
Yes, and there's a big misunderstanding. That's the problem, but I can explain her this very good.
Indeed. She likes tennis, swimming, and she worked in accountancy. And you explained to her that you worked in a factory and you also trained a football team.
Yeah. I said to her, my football trainer in the evening from boys from 16, and so she said, "Oh, I like Chelsea. I like the Dutch player Ruud Gullit. You know him?" And I say, certainly I like Ruud Gullit. He was a famous football player in Italy, England, and also in Holland. And she do like Ruud Gullit. It's for her well known.
Okay, let me once again describe. This was July of 2005 in Benidorm in a disco where an Irish girl, approximately 37, 38 years of age, who was on holidays with her 3 children, 2 girls and a boy and her niece, met Gert, a Dutchman, and the two of them hit it off and got on very well. She has blonde hair, and he's been trying to track you down since 2005. And if you know anything about this, or indeed if anybody else knows anything about it, please contact us now on 1850 715 922. Well, Gert, let's see if we can find her for you.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It is beautiful, yes, you're right there.
Yeah.
Okay, well done. I hope I will have good news for you soon.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Maybe the girl bells to your radio, and you have my 06 number, my 06.
That's correct, yep.
Yes, and then hope so it's going well.
Well, I hope it's going well myself. And fingers crossed, as we say here in Ireland. Yeah.
We also in Holland, we say that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Gert, good morning, goodbye.
Yeah, thank you.
There you go. Nice fella. He works in a factory, trains young footballers. His name is Gert. He's Dutch. You met him in July of 2005 in a disco in Benidorm. He fell in love with you. You had blonde hair, 3 children. Eldest was 16, 2 girls and a boy. You were also on holiday with your niece. You like tennis and swimming and Ruud Gullit, the Dutch soccer player. And he's been looking for you for 2 years. He's in love with you. Philip, good morning to you.
How are you, Gerry? How are you doing?
Very good. We were talking about, myself and Fiona Looney were talking about strange foods. Foods our fathers loved. Tripe, tongue, cod's roe. Things that I firmly believe were cooked and eaten and consumed by the last generation just to annoy their prodigy and offspring.
All things I like myself now.
Yeah.
That was lovely. Yeah.
Your brother-in-law was a butcher, wasn't he?
He was indeed, yeah.
And you were treated to what?
He used to bring us home what would be called sheep's testicles. They were called sweetbreads.
Why were they called sweetbreads? I've never been able to figure that out. They were basically sheep's balls, weren't they? Testes.
Yeah.
Mm.
And he used to put them in sort of a breadcrumb and just deep fry them and then put vinegar and salt on them, and they were the most beautiful thing you ever left. They were absolutely gorgeous.
Were they?
Oh, super.
Can you describe what they actually tasted like? Were they not quite fibrous, were they not?
No, it was kind of like... He actually had a sweet taste of them. I think that's why you had to put the vinegar on them to take the sweetness out of the taste.
I wonder why they were sweet.
I don't know. I haven't a clue now, honest to God. But all I know is that an odd Saturday he'd bring them home and we'd fry them up on a Saturday evening, and me and him would sit at the table and eat them while everybody else vomited.
Everybody else vomited.
Yeah.
What did the chef had a song about them in South Park, didn't he? Oh, chocolate salty balls. Remember that?
Yeah. We also
Lick my chocolate salty balls.
We also had a friend that was owned the chipper, and we used to go up to the market sometimes with him to get the fish, and he'd get a box of ray, and when he'd bring it back and he'd be cutting it up, each ray had sort of two jowls hanging out of his face. Yeah. And we used to cut them off and dip them in batter and deep fry them, and they were the best bit of the ray.
Really?
Oh yeah, super. They were like little circular balls about half the size of a golf ball, and the sweetest. Honest to God, they were. You know, I always loved ray myself, backbone ray and that, but the jowls were the best bit. Absolutely.
Because I've never had jowl of ray. I've never experienced that.
Yeah, we used to get nearly a bucket. We'd get nearly a silver bucket out of them, and we'd keep them for a few days. Dip them in batter and deep fry them, and lovely they were, lovely, absolutely super.
And what else have you eaten that's unusual?
Unusual? Well, I've eaten ox tongue.
Yeah.
And when we were kids, my mum used to get hearts. Sometimes an ox's head, or sometimes...
An ox's head?
No, heart.
Oh, heart, okay.
Heart. And she'd stuff it and stick it in the oven, and that was gorgeous as well.
That was nice too, was it?
Yeah.
But have you ever had lark's tongue in aspic?
No.
Well, I tell you, buddy, you haven't lived until you've had that.
Gerry